I wore my sister's dress. I walked down her aisle. I married her man. And for 2 years, nobody knew. Not him, not his family. The morning of the wedding, my sister left a note on the table. It said, "I cannot do this. I am sorry. Do not look for me." My mother was shaking. My father could not speak, and my sister was already gone. I looked at her dress hanging on the door, and I made the worst decision of my life. Or maybe the best one. I still do not know. I put on the dress. I said her name when they asked, and I became someone I was never supposed to be. That was the day everything changed. My name is Samara. My sister's name is Nina. We were identical twins. Same face, same voice. People confused us our whole lives. Teachers, friends, even people who had known us for years got it wrong sometimes. But we were never the same on the inside. Nina was the loud one, funny and confident, the one who changed the energy of the room. I was the quiet one, the one who sat at the back. People liked me, but they loved Nina. When Paul came into the picture, he came through our families. Both families knew each other. They thought Paul and Nina would be good together. Paul had seen us both once at a family dinner. He found it hard to tell us apart. Nina laughed about that. She said, "One day I will send you in my place and nobody will notice." I laughed with her. I never thought she meant it. Days passed. Paul and Nina met. They talked. A wedding date was set quickly. Nina seemed fine with it. Paul was kind, gentle, and sweet. He looked at people like they were worth his attention. The way he listened when someone spoke. I noticed all of it. And then I stepped back because he was not there for me. Paul was never there for me. So I put it away inside myself and I left it there. I found the note at 7 in the morning. The wedding was at 11. Nina's phone was off. Her bag was gone. Her passport was gone. She hadn't just left the wedding. She had left everything. I sat with my parents. Nobody spoke. The food was ordered. Paul's family had arrived. Everything was in place except the bride. Then my mother looked at me. She said nothing. She just looked at me, and I understood what she was asking. I want to be honest about it. Nobody forced me. Nobody told me to do it. It was my choice. I told myself I was doing it for my parents, for the shame, for Paul who had no idea what was happening. But if I am being honest, I did it for myself. I had never stopped thinking about Paul from the day I first saw him. I wore Nina's wedding dress. I kept my face down during the walk down the aisle. My heart was beating fast. Paul lifted my veil and looked at me. For 1 second, I thought it was over, but Paul smiled and held my hand. When they asked for the bride's name, I said, Nina. We signed the papers. I was his wife, not me, Samara. Nina, a woman who was sitting in an airport somewhere far away while I wore her ring. I told myself I would tell him that night. Then after the honeymoon. Then after the first month. But Paul was not easy to leave. He made me laugh. He never raised his voice. I was always the other twin, the quiet one. but Paul made me feel special. I knew losing him would destroy me. So I kept the secret, and I kept becoming Nina. Paul trusted me. He told me things he said he had never told anyone else. We had a real life together. We argued sometimes about money, rent. Paul thought he knew who I was, but he didn't even know my real name. 2 years passed. One afternoon, there was a knock at the door. Paul was at work. I opened the door. It was Nina. She was standing there. She looked tired. She looked at me, then at the house behind me. Nina understood everything in 5 seconds. Her mouth opened slightly, then closed. I stepped outside and pulled the door shut behind me. We sat on the front step. Nina did not shout. She did not cry. She just looked at me for a long time. Then she said, "How long?" I said, 2 years. Nina said, "Does Paul know?" I said, "No." Nina looked away, then quietly said, "Samara, you have to tell him." I said, "I know," and this time I meant it. Nina stood up. She looked at me and said, "You lived my life, Samara." I could not believe what I just heard. Then Nina left. That night, I thought about the morning of the wedding. That note. I had told myself so many times that I did it for everyone else. But the truth is, I did it because I wanted to. I wanted Paul. I wanted that life. I wanted to finally be the one who was chosen. And I had taken that without asking if I had the right. That was my truth, and it was time to own it. I told him on a Thursday evening after dinner. Paul was happy. He had a good day at work. And I hated that. I hated that I was about to break something good. But I sat across from him and said, "Paul, I need to tell you something. Please let me finish before you speak." His face changed. He put his cup down. I said, "I am not Nina. My name is Samara. I am her twin sister. Nina left the morning of the wedding. I put on her dress. I signed the papers. I said her name, and I never told you the truth." Paul did not move. He did not speak. He just looked at me for a long time. His face was full of confusion. Paul stood up slowly. He walked to the window. He stood there with his back to me. I did not go to him. I just waited. Paul did not speak that night. He slept in the living room. I lay in our bed, staring at the ceiling. I did not sleep. The next morning, Paul did not look at me. I sat down. We were quiet for a long time. Then Paul said, "Was any of it real?" I said, "All of it. Every single day. Everything I felt was real. The only lie was the beginning. I am sorry. I am sorry I took that choice away from you." Paul looked hurt. He said, "I need time, Samara." I said, "I know. Take whatever you need." Paul asked for 1 week. I stayed. He stayed. We moved around each other carefully. On the 7th day he sat across from me. Paul said, "I have been trying to figure out when exactly I fell in love with you, Samara. Not Nina, you. The way you laugh at your own jokes. The way you always leave the last cup of coffee for me without saying anything. Those things were never Nina. I know that now. They were always you. What you did was wrong. You lied to me for 2 years. And I have to decide if what we built together is worth more than how it started. I think it is. But we do this honestly from now on." No more hiding, no more lying, just us. Tears filled my eyes. I hugged my husband. I learned something that year. Truth always finds its way out. The only question is whether you let it out yourself or wait for it to explode. Nina and I had the same face, but Paul fell in love with mine, not because of how I looked, but because of who I was. Paul chose me with his eyes open, knowing everything, and after a lifetime of being second, that was everything. If you liked this story, please like, comment, share, and subscribe.